bubble gum, and I am all out of gum.
Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to The Boring Company. I'm coming to you today with an episode exploring a particular project that has been proposed. That project is the Boca Chica Diversion Tunnel. So it's allowing access for people who live in this area and potentially people who are visiting this area to get to the beach. Potentially maybe they're going there to view the SpaceX launches. So it has been proposed. I think Elon Musk has talked about potentially doing this in the past, but I thought that now that it's getting a little bit more serious, it's about time we explored this particular project. Before we start, please like and subscribe to the video. Please comment on the video, tell me what you think about this project in particular. Do you like the project? Do you think it's a good idea? And please subscribe and hit that bell icon. Okay, so this is the kind of manufacturing facility, launch facility for SpaceX. When rockets are being launched from this facility, when rockets are potentially being tested as well, they close off. I believe, in fact, it must be. They close off this road. Quite a lot of this road. I believe up to 4 miles of the road are closed off. That means you can't access the beach, which is up here somewhere. I think, was it down that way? No, I think it's actually down that way. My apologies. So, so it's a little bit of an inconvenience for people who live in this area, and for people who, maybe they're on the beach and they can't leave the beach for a long period of time because they're closing this down for many, many hours. So the Boca Chica Tunnel has been proposed. This would be a single lane tunnel. It would allow people to access the beach pretty much 24/7. I'm guessing it would only really be open when there are closures, but potentially, you could open it up when 24/7, just if people wanted to use it for the hell of it. But it's only really going to be useful for when there are closures. It probably will be limited to around 50 miles per hour, maybe slightly more than that. The reason for that is that it's going to be open to the public. The vast majority of vehicles using it to begin with probably won't be using autopilot or any kind of similar kind of ProPilot kind of system or anything like that. So it's a proposed bypass for vehicles requiring access to the beach. The beach is becoming very popular for space tourism. I think as SpaceX expands its launch capabilities in this area, Starship is going to obviously be a popular draw for people coming to watch that, and they may want to stay on the beach there and get a good view of it. I'm guessing you wouldn't be able to get within sort of a mile of the actual rocket itself, but you should be able to get fairly close and watch those launches. And I think over time, as they kind of perfect the technology, you could see potentially, a good, a few dozen thousand people, maybe 20,000 people potentially could be watching this from the beach area. So that's kind of like a reasonable business case for building this particular tunnel. At this moment in time, there might only be several hundred people that are going to access the beach, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But in the future, obviously with space tourism, there could be a good business case for this. And I'd imagine that you'd probably charge a toll of around $10 to $15 per use of the tunnel. A strong possibility exists that this will include battery electric vehicle and ICE vehicles. That is a major concern for me because no one has said this is only for BVs. This is going to, I'm guessing, because it's focused on the local population and people in nearby towns and cities, they're going to be using ICE vehicles in this tunnel. That causes some major headaches in terms of how this tunnel operates. Its overall kind of capacity is going to be limited because there's ICE vehicles. You're obviously going to have to spend a bit more money on your ventilation system. You're going to have to think about how a vehicle is going to exit this system. What is the ideal speed limit? What are going to be the gaps that you want in between vehicles? Any kind of curves are going to have to be quite gentle so that you've got a clear line of sight throughout the whole length of the tunnel. Lighting is going to have to be really good as well. So the current LVCC, Las Vegas Convention Center tunnel design won't work in Boca Chica. It's just not going to function properly, because that is focused on essentially a mass transit system. This is not a mass transit system to begin with. It's going to be a diversion tunnel for existing vehicles, so you're going to have to design it accordingly. You need to focus on what are the risks here and how do you eliminate or severely mitigate those particular risks. So another thing worth considering as well, which is probably for me a bigger concern than the actual safety aspects, is building this tunnel could be very, very problematic. The ground conditions in this area, the fact that you're essentially surrounded by water, low-lying water on both sides, is very concerning for me. So it's going to be very loose ground, possibly non-cohesive ground, very high water table, very loose. The fact that it's got a very high water table means you're going to be really kind of limited to the speeds that you can achieve with the TBM. And also you're going to be pumping out a lot of water. Where are you going to put that water? Because these are areas where you have lots of marine life, and there's a nature reserve. I believe on this side there is a nature reserve. So it's a lot of concerns with this, in my opinion. So you're going to have to really plan ahead. Safety must be paramount over cost concerns. So you're going to have to focus on safety. One good way of doing this is having some kind of traffic light system whereby the tunnels are only one way. You must be stopping people coming in from the other end at all times. So you're probably going to have a manned presence there. Also, you're going to have to let vehicles enter the system at set time periods. So maybe you let a vehicle enter the system every 24 seconds. Maybe you can get that down to 20 seconds, but you're going to have to leave a nice margin in between vehicles, and those vehicles, you're going to have to stipulate to them that they must travel at exactly 50-55 miles per hour at all times. Yeah, they can't be going up and down in speed. They have to absolutely put it on at 50 miles per hour, focus on that speed. You can't have vehicles very close to each other, so you might have to have some kind of system where you warn people if they're getting too close to other vehicles. It's a very, very problematic setup. I personally feel very nervous about it. I'd much rather this system was limited to just Tesla vehicles using autopilot, but that's just not how it's going to play out the way I've read this. So those are my concerns. What is the route going to be? It looks like this. As you can see, there is a very, very large body of water on this side. There's also low-lying water in this area here. And you've got the sea here. There's just water everywhere, very high water table. Not much room for putting things alongside your route. In terms of kind of like the radius of the curve, it's fairly gentle, it's good. This part at the end, you're probably going to need to have it curve out like this, and then you're going to have a ramp somewhere along here. That doesn't necessarily need to be a tunnel. You could have some kind of cut and cover system, but it'd only be around 150 meters long if you wanted to do that. Otherwise, you could just have a ramp, like how I've done it here. I've just had a ramp here, 1 in 6 gradient ramp. So this is the SpaceX launch facility here. This is what is causing problem for the local residents. Obviously, it gets very, very noisy, and there's potential for explosions when things are being launched by Starship. So, as this kind of ramps up, and you're having maybe 2 to 3 launches per day, potentially a lot more than that, it becomes even more apparent that you will need some kind of access tunnel for the beach, unless you just want to shut the beach off permanently, which would be unfortunate, but that's another possibility rather than spending all this money. It's 4.22 miles in length. Potentially you could shorten it to around 2.8 miles if you just had it start here, but it's going to be difficult to do that. Plus, if you want to do this properly, you want it to start all the way down at the bottom. Let me just show you that. So here's kind of the overview satellite kind of image. As you can see, there's the launch facility here. Here's the beach. I'm guessing cars can drive alongside the beach, so you probably won't need some kind of permanent road there. But I'd imagine that in the future you'll have large groups of people in this area potentially, and maybe up here as well, watching the launches. So you'd want to kind of close off this area for access, and then you'd have your tunnel where it goes around here, and then you'd have a road that links up there. So it's interesting. It certainly looks quite problematic. As you can see, that there's about 2 to 3 foot of water here I don't know if that's there permanently. I don't know if that kind of drains out when the tide goes, goes out, and then when it drains up, it kind of builds up when the tide comes in. But this road is Boca Chica Boulevard. This is the road that gets closed down fairly often when there are launches. Obviously, launches get cancelled, so they close it down for 4 hours and then they reopen it for no reason. So it's super frustrating. If you had a tunnel there, I could see how that would make people's lives a little bit more convenient. But you need to think about safety first. Here's the finished routes. That's 4.22 miles. So you start here and you end here. Reasonably straight. It's going to be easy for people to just drive along there. There's not going to be much turning of the wheel. You're going to put rumble strips alongside the road deck just to make sure people stay focused and that. And maybe you could have some kind of radio system where people could tune in on the radio and listen to announcements along the tunnel regarding both SpaceX and any potential safety concerns as well. That's pretty much done in a lot of systems in Scandinavia. As you can see, I mean, there's just water everywhere. I'm guessing water from the Rio Grande leaks into here. That's why there's kind of it's almost like a very shallow reservoir, as it were, like a mud flat, I guess. So the ground conditions are not great. It's going to be difficult. These are where we're going to put our exit ramps. Yeah, so we're going well, not exit ramps. These are emergency exit ramps. They will only be used in emergency situations. You'll have an entrance ramp here and an exit ramp, and 99.9% of the time vehicles will be using these. These will be in a case of emergency, so like a fire, maybe some kind of terrorist incident, maybe if the tunnels get flooded, you could have people exit here. You also put your ventilation infrastructure into the ramp. By having it combined, the ramp and the ventilation system, that will save you a ton of money. So I have got 4 here, spaced around sort of like 800 to 1,000 meters apart. I think that is viable. This one here might be difficult to do, but it is, that should be possible. You might have to build some kind of retaining wall here and kind of pull some land away from this area here, or might even be better doing it on this side if that is protected land. But these 3 here should be reasonably easy to build. There won't be any real issues. There's plenty of land. Okay, so what else have we got? Here's the kind of ideal setup: combined vent shaft and ramp. We've got 4 of those. You're going to be injecting air into the system via the road deck, so you're going to be pumping air at very high velocities underneath the road deck, and then you have vents sort of every 4 to 5 meters where you're pushing it in at very high velocities, and then you're going to be sucking it out at these ramps. Again at very high velocities, and that'll keep the air clean, which allows you to run ICE vehicles in this tunnel. But you're going to have a 20-second gap in between vehicles, potentially maybe slightly less than that, maybe an 18-second gap, but there's going to have to be some kind of sizable gap just to ensure safety, and people are going to have to be fixed at 50 miles per hour, 55 miles per hour. This is kind of an illustration that was originally proposed for the Boring Company. So they have these kind of shelves. I think kind of borrowing some ideas from this system would be useful. As you can see, there's a massive amount of wastage under here. This is where we're going to put our ventilation system. This is going to be pushing air into the system. It's not going to be pulling air out. So air is going to be coming up sort of every 4 or 5 meters. Very small, kind of slots in the road deck. Maybe sort of, 20 mil wide by 60 mil long, and then you're going to be injecting them at very high velocities. But this road deck here is just not wide enough, so I've designed it in a completely different way. So this is the kind of design that I think would ensure great safety. So you've got emergency lighting 24/7. The road deck itself is 1.2 meters or 1,200 millimeters deep. That is insanely deep, but it allows us to make the road deck really wide, just over 10 foot wide. As you see, it's made of reinforced concrete. We've got our buffers here, which is these are 500 millimeters tall. What that does is it prevents vehicles, barreling into the side of the tunnel and rolling over. You don't have to be perfectly straight, they could be slightly angled if you want to do it as such, but I recommend doing it at 90 degrees. You're going to have a sprinkler main as well, which is this over here, and a 14mm rumble strip, which is this here. So let me just start again. So you're going to have rumble strips in this area here. Again, you probably will never use that sprinkler system, but it's worth putting it in just as a safety, especially if you've got ICE vehicles in the system. And also, there potentially could be battery fires as well, but that's going to be so rare, it might only happen every 20-30 years. But these buffers, these buffers that run alongside are very, very, very important to make this system safe for ICE vehicles and vehicles that don't use autopilot. The ventilation system is below the road deck, so different parts of the tunnel will be fed by different ductwork. Some of this ductwork will be basically, pushing air down for a good half a mile before it then, connects up to the main kind of output piece, as it were, which is here. That allows you to keep the velocities quite high throughout the length of the tunnel, and then this can also be connected at the ramp areas, which you have 4 of along the route. So project costings, how much is this actually going to cost? Well, it costs a lot. It's going to cost a lot because you're going to have to incorporate a lot more safety features, and the road deck itself is going to have to be a lot deeper, which is also going to add to the cost. So just to give you a ballpark, I have done a previous costing of this on my quarterly report, and thinking about it, if they're going to have ICE vehicles in it, it's going to have to be a lot more. So this is kind of a revision if you're wondering why I've suddenly increased my costs. So single bore tunnel for 4.22 miles is going to be 24.5 million. The actual concrete road deck is going to cost 7.25 million. Introducing kind of a very powerful mechanical ventilation system, which you're going to have to introduce because of the build-up of fumes in this tunnel. If you've got ICE vehicles, it's going to be 3.25 million. Sprinkler system, very important. I suggest that they introduce this on all systems, no matter what what vehicles they intend to use. That'll be 2.2 million. Rampways, so both the entrance and exit ramps, and then the kind of emergency ramps. Altogether, that's going to cost just under 7 million. The total cost, $44.15 million. Now, that's small change for SpaceX. I suspect they can make that money back by charging a toll of around $10 to $15. But it's a big hefty price, certainly is. But you've got to account for all the safety systems that you're going to have to include in addition, plus all the extra costs to make the concrete road deck suitable for people just to drive on it normally without the use of autopilot. And there you go. It's an interesting project. I hope you would write some comments for me in terms of what you think about it. I'm kind of 50-50 on whether it should be built. I do obviously like to see new infrastructure being built, but it kind of seems like a bit of an overkill to me. But let me know what you think about it. I would prefer if they didn't let ICE vehicles into the system, because then you could reduce the cost considerably. But given that only around 5% of the US population has electric vehicles, I don't think that is viable at this present moment in time. Please consider following me on Twitter, Discord, and of course, if you really enjoy the video, please support me on Patreon with just $2 or more. Thank you so much. Thank you to all my Patreons. Very, very many people supporting this channel, offering me support. It continues to help me make better videos, so thank you for continuing to support me. And please, stick with me. I'm continuing to make more improvements to this channel. So yeah, thank you. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's always interesting to look at new projects and consider all the various factors that kind of affect the success of how you implement that particular project. I think that it might be a good test case for Proofrock to build this system, but other than that, maybe they should delay it a few years until basically the electric vehicle percentage of the people that live in this area is a lot higher. Okay, thanks for joining me. Take care now, and remember guys, don't be boring. I will see you on the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.
everybody. This is Sparta!